All right, let's get into our panel discussion for this evening. Tonight, we are asking you, what do you make of suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner for Crime Detection, Shadrack Sibiya's testimony at the Madlanga Commission? Send us your views on WhatsApp to 072-110-5584 or give us a call on 010-594-6010. Joining us tonight is Criminologist Professor Nirmala Gopal, as well as governance expert Professor Kedibone Phago. Both profs, a very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us. Prof. Gopal, maybe let's just begin with what your take is on Sibiya as a witness in general. He's been on the stand for 2 days. Others have described him as evasive, as defensive. What do you make of his character? And is he a more clearer and more defined witness than what we saw at the ad hoc committee?
So good evening, Katnafo, and good evening to the viewers. Yeah, very interesting, I must admit. I think in some ways his evidence seems quite surreal. You know, it's almost like, are we really hearing this about, the top cops in the country? But certainly a lot more composed in the commission compared to the ad hoc committee. And I think that's largely because of the effort that went into preparing his statements. And of course, one can clearly see that he had a great deal of help or assistance from the strong team of lawyers that he has. In terms of, the general view around his demeanor, he's appearing and he's demonstrating traits of being a witness that's not credible. I think there's a great deal of misinformation that he's peddling. Definitely some of I think a great deal of the information seems to be implausible, and that further makes him a witness that's not credible. And I think the final point for me on this particular question is that instead of defending himself against the allegations that were made against him, what he is instead doing is pointing fingers at those who made those allegations against him. And what I think he's doing in the process, he could be doing two things. One is to either try to confuse the commissioners, and the other is to deflect from his wrongdoings.
Prof. Phago, I mean, we're sitting here listening to the possibilities of the demonstrating of traits that show someone who might not be credible. What was your take of Shadrack Sibiya and his testimony at the Madlanga Commission?
Good evening, Katlaho, and good evening to the viewers. For me, from my governance background, the major interest is to want to understand how people at the leadership positions in government, in public institutions conduct themselves, and how do they coordinate their activities. And I think from that point of view, the revelations that came from him, the testimony that came from him, yesterday and today, clearly demonstrated that we have a lot of big problems in our security system in the country, and that it is really showing that there are major cracks. But what is very interesting is the point you are raising now, that he is pointing fingers. And I think that is a very important point of departure to say, when we have public institutions like the police that are supposed to take care of our safety and security needs as a country, and they are failing, where would the problem be? Because without really seeing where the problem is, I do not think that the outcomes of the commission will be able to help us see how to put some proofs for our future, because we really need to take these proceedings extremely serious, especially if we want to protect the citizens of this country.
Prof. Gopal, I mean, we heard from previous witnesses in the commission, just testifying that Sibiya had close relationships with Kat Matlala. We heard about the impalas that were meant to be taken to Sibiya's farm, the cash exchanges of about 2 million for him to buy a property. Even on the show last night, we had someone who called in, an Imran Bait, who is a Pakistani national, and he was also claiming that he was paying General Sibiya amounts up to millions with regards to him protecting him, so this being extortion fees. When we look from a criminological perspective, what are the potential impacts of such allegations, and also just on the integrity and the public perception of a position such as that which Shadrack Sibiya occupies?
Yeah, so I mean, I also listened to Imran, and I think what it does is that it discredits a whole unit, especially since, you know, Sibiya is the Deputy National Commissioner, and if it's proven that he was engaged in extortion, I think it casts a really poor light on SAPS, because if at that level we are having corruption and you know, criminal activity, one begins to wonder that, you know, how that filters down to those who are his line reports and below. So I think that's the first submission from me. But the second one is that Sibiya seems to be denying every allegation. Well, I suppose he will deny every allegation. But I think more importantly than that, Katlaho, is the fact that it seems as though he has realized that he's going down. And what he's decided is that I'm not going down alone. I'm going to go down with every other officer who is either actively involved in corruption, has been involved in corruption, etc. So I think what it does also say to us is that at that top management level, it seems as though we are broken.
It certainly does. Prof. Phago, I mean, we heard earlier during Sibiya's testimony where one of the commissioners had asked with regards to how it was that General Khumalo was the one who would then need to explain the reasons for the disbandment in a report when he didn't make the decision to disband the PKTT. Maybe just talk us through the thinking, especially when it comes to the pointing of fingers, where things now start to get confusing and muddied with regards to accountability and responsibility, amongst all of them being General Sibiya, General Masimula, General Khumalo, as well as Mkhwanazi.
So Katlaho, what happens in public offices is that there is a structure, there are processes that are supposed to be in place and that they need to be observed. Because when we go through the commissions of inquiry in this case, the attention is always put on what are the processes, what are the policies, what systems do they have in place, the reporting system, the the operational, the SOPs, the standard operating procedures in the manner that they conduct their work. But what I found very interesting was from the general, from General Sibiya's testimony was that you could see he's not really comfortable in answering questions around the various task teams. He's trying to make that argument, but when questions arise out of the standard practice relating to the various task team, he then gets confused and doesn't really know how to handle that. But to answer your question directly, ideally in situations like this, the accounting officer who is General Fani Masemola should really be in a position to explain the processes. But also, if the commissioner, the police commissioner, finds himself in a situation where there is either a political interference or a junior official, because what really plays out clearly here, and I think that is what the commissioners were trying to solicit from his testimony, was that he seems to have known that the political killing task team was going to be disbanded, but his line managers did not know. So you can see that he had somehow, a direct link with the political principles and would have known outside the formalities. And it looks to me that that was really one of the major issues at play, that how can a junior official know the decision that would be coming, but not their line managers, when their line manager in this particular instance are actually an accounting officer. So I think it is from that point of view that in my view, that this situation is going to go in circles, precisely because it is very clear that there is a political interference. So General Fani Masemola will say he didn't know, as he said, that he was shocked by the letter, and but it looked like the General Sibiya knew and expected that kind of a decision. And it's going to be very interesting to see if General Fani Masemola is going to be called back to clarify this matter,
Right.
or the minister is going to come back and say, because the previous discussions did not really raise
All right,
the
Prof.
issue
Phago, can we